Hey, welcome to Playing for Keeps, the show where we take a deep dive into emotional intelligence, sex, love, adult attachment theory, mental health, therapy, and everything in between that creates great relationships. Your host, DJ, is a certified life coach and emotional intelligence practitioner. She's here to be of service to all the listeners interested in love and relationship. Now, here's your host, DJ.
Hello, everyone. This is your girl DJ with Playing for Keeps podcast. I hope that everyone is doing well today during these trying times. Today, I have a special guest. Lisa works with men and women to awaken the conscious parts of themselves that knows how to love deeply. Lisa is a coach and counselor with 26 years of experience in personal growth and development, psychology, human behavior, with an emphasis on relationships, which includes the most important one, with oneself. Lisa enjoys nature, hiking, rock climbing, zip lining, organic gardening, dance, and music. She has two amazing daughters and loves living in the mountains of North Carolina. Lisa helps those that want to have a more fulfilling relationship in life. When she works with one aspect of a client's life that is holding them back, it tends to trickle down to other areas of their life. Love being the one thing we all crave at a deep level. We crave our true nature, our self-love, and to express that love to others. Looking inside ourselves can be the scariest part of life, facing our fears, demons, guilt, hurt, and trauma. Lisa makes this journey easier for her clients. She has gone through many life experiences so that she has the ability to understand others' pain and suffering. She has walked through and came out stronger, more loving, and able to face whatever comes up in life. She has officially climbed the mountain. Today, Lisa is here to speak on the masculine and feminine energies, dating and chemistry versus attraction, how we attract dysfunction while looking for chemistry. Welcome to the show, Lisa. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, DJ. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
No, most definitely. No, thank you for coming on. Someone with your expertise. I'm very happy that you decided to come on. So tell us a little bit just about yourself and what you've been doing within the last 26 years.
Life is a journey, right?
Yeah.
So within the 26 years, I overcome domestic violence, which was pretty brutal. I was badly beaten up by my ex-husband after I had already left him. And so then a journey started in deep depression, like not wanting to live, not able to barely function, not able to really love in a way that I wanted to. And so I began a journey on how to pull myself back out of that situation, to love myself and to understand how I get into situations, how I attract dysfunction, what is it about me that I needed to work on. Wow. And that became a passion, my self-growth, my personal development. And it's been ongoing ever since. Yeah.
So with your research, what did you find that made you attracted to someone who put you in a situation like that?
Well, I grew up in an era where you love someone, you get married, right? You know, So I didn't have the ability to discern the different aspects of life. And so I fell in love and I thought that that's what I was supposed to do, is get married to this person. I had no idea about codependency at all. And then, because he ended up having a drug and alcohol addiction later on into the relationship.
Gotcha.
So it was more of a understanding of not needing to fix myself, but why, you know? So I began learning about the way that I was conditioned as a child, not only by my family, but society as well, and how that played into my decision to get married, and ignored the red flags and ignored the gut feeling, which I had like 10 minutes before the wedding started, right? That
Wow.
thing where you just like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this," right?
Yeah. How
And
do
you
you
think,
how do you dissect that from cold feet to not to knowing that that's not the right person? Because
well,
sometimes
that
it's just cold feet.
absolutely. And it's a journey, right? We learn.
Yeah.
And so we have to go inside and learn to know thyself, right? Not to be
Yes.
cliche, but to really know ourselves. That feeling meant this. This feeling means that. So I'm very excited to be here with you today. I'm a little bit nervous, but that's different than the gut feeling something's wrong, right?
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Did he display, like I know you said later on in the relationship, he ended up having a drug addiction, alcohol. Did he have those behaviors before that gave you red flags, or was it just something in your gut that told you it just wasn't right?
I didn't know the signs because I grew up, and a lot of people do grow up in a society where alcoholism is a social norm. We don't know
True.
how to differentiate between this is a little bit of alcohol and it seems okay versus this person can't stop drinking. Even if they have, a 6-pack or two a week, it doesn't seem like a lot,
Got you.
but it escalated into drug use. And I had no idea. And see, divorce wasn't an option for me at that point in my life because I grew up in a family where if you get married, you stay married. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah. And so, but it was a wake up call to me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to eroticize, abuse in any way, but it was a wake up call for me. It's like, oh my gosh, wow, this was a big pivoting point in my life where I had to say, I don't know if I want to live anymore.
Wow. Yeah,
And
that's
I had to get up every day until I could not function. I couldn't get up and brush my teeth.
wow. So
And then
go ahead.
what happened for me was the doctors wanted to, give me all kinds of drugs, and that didn't work. As I watched a show back then, it was like a Dr. Phil show, but it was back in my time when I was much younger.
Oh my
Sally Jesse Raphael. That dates me, right?
God.
And so there was people on her show that had been born with all kinds of deformities and challenges, and their life was so much harder than the average person. And I started crying. I was like, if they can do it, I can too.
Right.
And so I picked myself up in that moment and I said, one way or another, I'm going to come out of this. I'm going to heal myself. And that was the moment where I started reading books. I started going to workshops and I started talking to people, learning as much as I could to figure out what it was I needed to do to heal myself.
Do you remember what the first book that you picked up, or do you remember any book in the beginning of your journey that helped you kind of just come to this revelation of really finding yourself and putting yourself back together in order for you to be healthy within a relationship?
Well, I had originally gone to CODA meetings, and that was my first experience with it. But then after having another relationship that wasn't abusive, but had actually just broken my heart because I had not dealt with the previous one, right?
Yeah.
I went to the bookstore and picked up a book called Commitment Phobia.
Tell us a
It
little
was
bit about.
about people, mostly men, that can't commit. And so,
Okay.
yeah, that was the first book.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. The first, I want to dig into this topic that you wanted to speak about.
Mm-hmm.
The one where you talk about chemistry versus attraction and how we attract dysfunction while looking for chemistry. Tell us a little bit about that, because I've never heard of that terminology as far as well, I think I've heard of it, but I've never heard of it in that way. Like how you can attract dysfunction looking for chemistry versus attraction. Like I don't think I've ever heard of it in that way.
Absolutely. So there's this fallacy in society that chemistry is the sign that we look for compatibility. And depending on how your childhood was, whether how functional it was, your emotional attachment, your
True.
attachment theory that we discussed, right?
Yeah. Yes.
whether it was secure, anxious, or avoidant, then our brain has been wired to that. And we're going to have chemistry with a person that's matching dysfunction with us. I grew
Wow.
up in a very codependent family, right?
Yeah.
So the attractant to that is someone that has an addiction. Unbeknownst to me at the time, it happens within our brain within like just seconds, that
Wow.
chemistry where you get this euphoria, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
person, right? I have chemistry. This is so right. And then you go into this like whole thing with brain chemicals through the honeymoon stage, right?
Right.
And when your brain is high on those chemicals, you're going to miss red flags.
That is very, very true since
Absolutely.
you put it that way. Wow. Mine
You
is
absolutely will. And so there's a difference between attraction. Attraction is, yeah, I find this person attractive. They're very interesting. Maybe I'll have coffee with them again, right? And it
okay.
builds slowly.
See,
But there's
mom,
not that roller coaster ride where you're high and then you're low and then you're like, oh, you're longing for that, you know?
I guess I thought of attraction kind of the same way as how you broke down chemistry because you know, you think a guy, maybe I put, you know, the guy looks good also within like my attachment theory because I have to my attachment style because I also have to find them very attractive in order for me to even ride that roller coaster. So I guess that's why my mind went to attraction because they'll say that, you know, the movies like Fatal Attraction and things of that nature, like you automatically think, well, don't follow attraction either. So why do you think people get that misconstrued?
Movies, media, just, you know, novels, romance
Sure.
stories, right? And then, you know, it's a societal thing where years ago we didn't marry for attraction or chemistry. It was for convenience, right?
Sure.
So we're still in our infancy stage of learning how to be in relationships with love instead of that chemistry. And we often mistake chemistry for love, right?
That's true too.
It
That's true too.
is. It absolutely is. And so it's about, as I said, a journey into yourself to really know what you really deeply desire in a relationship: compatibility, lifestyle similarities, values that are shared, and attraction. And but if you have the one that feels like something just hit you with a ton of bricks, as far as a wow, this person, you know, that's
Right.
a high. It's almost, and they do say that it is almost addictive as heroin. It's
It
immediately.
it is
That's that's
how
the time
so
that
is
you
that
know.
what is that like how you would tell somebody like to do like to separate I guess to kind of put in their mind like when they get with somebody like what do they look for like what feelings do they look for?
Yeah, if they're looking for that something hit you really hard feeling, chances are it's chemistry, which might not be a bad thing if you grew up with a secure attachment. But if you grew up with a secure attachment, you're probably not looking for that hard hit kind of feeling either. And so we're looking at the reason why our brain gives us those strong hormones is to let us know this is similar. And if you don't
Gotcha.
want similar to what you grew up with, it's hard, but you know, it's
So
usually good to walk away from that.
so let's go into the attachment theories a little
Sure.
bit. Are you familiar with each attachment style and what they all um, correlate? Just in case somebody's listening and they don't know what the attachment styles are.
I do. I'm not an expert on attachment style, but I do. And I'm familiar with the anxious, avoidant, secure, and I just recently started doing research on the disorganized.
The fearful.
Yeah.
What I know the little bit. I don't know if you can kind of just help me out a little bit because I know I'm not an expert either, but I know people say you should aim for the secure. Like more likely you were raised in a home where there was no codependency. Um, Trying to think what else. You know, your parents were always there for you. They gave you space to be creative and do the things you wanted to do, but at the same time, they were always still around to support you if they needed you. Anxious people who kind of have an anxious attachment style, their childhood, like you said, I believe would probably have some definitely a lot of codependency within the household, correct?
Or abuse.
or abuse.
They grew up with uncertainty.
Gotcha. I know
Yeah,
that's
they
also
never
for the
really knew.
fearful
Yeah,
avoidant as well too. And I
absolutely.
know with more anxious lovers, they tend to be the super clingy ones. They're all over their partner. They're probably the ones that's always calling and texting, or if they're not always calling and texting because they're aware they're clingy, they use their
Yeah.
energy all the
Mhm.
time. Like their partners are always on their mind. They're always thinking of their partners, basically making their relationship their identity. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And losing themselves within the relationship. Um, and then there's the fearful avoidant, the one that you said you just kind of studied up on. That I think they say that's 5% of the population. I believe that it's way more. I
It's
think
way
it's
more. There's
50%.
different stats on that. Yeah.
It's 50% for secure, and then they say 25%. I think it's
25 anxious, 25 avoidant.
and then there's
But
like the little 5%
yeah,
for the fearful and
yeah,
fearful avoidant. And the fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidance are the same, but the difference between a fearful and a dismissive avoidant is dismissive people, they tend to think that love is just it's not necessary for survival. They may have grown up in a household where their parents weren't there for them, or their parents were probably there and they just paid the bills and they didn't pay them any attention. So
absolutely.
they
They
kind
were
of, and
very
then
distant.
and then with fearful avoidance, definitely probably had a really traumatizing childhood where these individuals grew up where they want love, but they don't believe that they can receive it. So they may go into a relationship super heavy, super interested, and then realize that, okay, it's turning into something, and they pull out because they feel a person's going to change their minds on them or whatever. And then sometimes it's not even within your household. Your attachment style could change within relationships as you grow up and you get
Absolutely.
into crazy relationships. So that's just kind of a short synopsis of what
Yeah,
attachment theory is.
you have a pretty good grasp of it. And to be honest with you, as an adult, we can go through different attachment styles throughout our life,
Definitely can.
depending on the events that happened. And I have been anxious, avoidant, and secure.
Me too. Me
So,
too.
and if something major happens in your life, it can throw you back into one or other of those. So,
Definitely.
absolutely. And then it is something to pay attention to, because if you notice that you're attracting, in our case, men that, come on hot and heavy and super romantic, and then all of a sudden you're like, what happened? Right?
Right.
Yeah, you need to know that.
That's kind of what started me on my journey officially. So with me personally, I think I mostly attracted guys who kind of had the similar attachment style as me. I'm more of an anxious person, and they kind of justified my point, like, okay, as long as I'm doing for them, they'll stick around. But this last guy I dated, it was the opposite. Like, he was all in at first, but then he got real distant, and it didn't prove I guess what I came up with in my mind of what makes a relationship work, right? So, and it hurt me really bad because I put so much into the relationship, and he kind of just was like, forget it. But then it taught me it didn't teach me, but what it did, it made me really look at myself and really just kind of do research, because I was so hurt behind the situation. So that's what led me on my journey to self-love and self-discovery, because I didn't love myself. I would go ahead in first into relationships trying to prove that I was just this ultimate person from God, but in reality, I was forgetting the fact that I was looking for a suitable partner too. And I didn't realize that until after the breakup with the last person I was with. So,
isn't that amazing how breakups can be a huge gift?
yes.
And it brings you back home to yourself every single time, because what you're left with is you.
Right.
And it's you.
Right. And if you take the opportunity to really look at yourself, look at the situation, and try to do the work as well, like, you will discover new things about yourself and you will grow if you decide to do that. There's a lot of people who will weep, but they don't just sit with themselves. They'll just find somebody else. They'll jump into the next relationship, and all you're doing really is blocking the fact that you can actually grow within this pain, because sometimes that's what it takes for you to learn, Yeah, a
Absolutely. As humans,
situation.
yeah, usually it takes pain. We don't get up every day and get excited when everything's wonderful and decide to grow. It's usually pain, suffering, anger, resentment that's going to push us.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's
Yeah,
just how it
yeah.
works in the human mind and the human brain. When you're comfortable and you're stable, you don't really learn it. You're comfortable, so you're not really grasping to learn anything really new. But then, like when you're put in a position and you're uncomfortable, it forces you to grow, like you said.
Mhm.
So the next topic where you talk about masculine and feminine energy, I'm really interested to kind of talk about it a little bit. I've talked about it before in my other podcast. Like I said in the past, I felt like I used a lot of my masculine energy within my relationships too. That's why it didn't work. Me, I'm an anxious person. I believe anxious people use a lot of their energy focusing on their partner, and
Mhm.
you're not relaxing like you're supposed to in the relationship. And when you push out masculine energy and you're with a man who also tries to display masculine, who has masculine energy as well, you tend to push them away because you're kind of taking over
You're
in a way.
competing. Absolutely,
Yeah,
you're
you're competing
competing.
and you don't even know you're competing. It's kind of like I'll use the example like when I'm in a relationship, I like to be the doer, like as far as I don't want him to feel like I need him like that. So he could come in and be like, "Hey, do you want me to do this for you?" Like, no, I got it. And you're thinking you look like the strong, independent woman, and you do, but you are blocking out a chance for intimacy because you're
Absolutely.
you're saying you got it, and it's kind of like in the back of his mind, he probably can't pinpoint it, but it's like, well, what do you need me for?
Um,
If he's really
well, you're
a man
rejecting
who
his
wants to be
offer
with you.
to feel really good about doing something for you.
Right,
Absolutely. And so
right,
I want to preface this as masculine energy and feminine energy is not sexist. It's a choice. It's something that each person has to decide for themselves. And some people actually choose androgyny, which is fine. But if you notice that in your case, we discussed about masculine, feminine, if you notice it's not working for you and you notice that you tend to be slam dancing in your relationship or
right.
competing, then maybe time to look at that energy and see how you can be complementary in your energy and allow certain things. And it's a ebb and a flow, right? It's a dance. It's a dance. And if you're slam dancing, you're dancing, but it can be a challenge.
Right.
Yeah. And if you like slam dancing, go for it. You do. But I notice when I talk to women, often they say, I just don't feel the passion that I did in the beginning. Yeah. And so it's about polarities.
So what advice would you give to a woman who seems to struggle with um that balance and that energy? Like I know for feminine, like what I recently learned, feminine energy, it's not just about like what people think is like just, rah rah, like, masculine and feminine energy. Like feminine energy is more of sitting back, creating, while masculine is more of like the doing energy. What advice would you give to a woman or anybody who struggles with that? Because even men also struggle with balancing their energies too. Like they have too much masculine energy and then they can't even relate to their female counterparts either.
Well, and some men are in their feminine energy, and that's what they feel good with, and that's absolutely wonderful. But it might work better to be looking for a masculine energy woman. And some women absolutely love being in their masculine energy, and they love to pursue the man, and they love the one to be the doer or the fixer and the pursuer. So, but feminine energy is about being, feeling, receiving, and it's not about always being feminine. We sometimes switch hats, right? And
Right,
as you and I discussed, our work can be very masculine oriented.
right.
But when in a relationship, you change hats.
And I think that's where people struggle, because I know when we had our initial conversation, I explained to you with my job as in HR and as a recruiter, you're constantly trying to be the best out of the group. As a recruiter, you want to hit those numbers, you want to get the most employees hired, blah blah blah. And then I would carry that energy also into my relationship, not knowing that that's what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're in a way you self-sabotage the relationship depending on what you're doing, because you're kind of competing with somebody who wants to show you that they want to be there for you, and you don't know how to let them do that.
Absolutely.
A question for you on that.
Sure.
Do you feel that women who do that, do they not trust themselves, so they have issues trusting somebody in a relationship?
There can be vulnerability issues. They can be, but a lot of people are confused. Society teaches us very different dynamics, right, than what I'm talking about, you and I, right? And so it's a lot of it is just confusion, right? Like, and as a mother, I use the example a lot. We're not always in mother mode, but when we're with our children, we go into mother mode. And so we change our hats, right? We don't go into our children with the same energy we do at work. So we actually do know how to change hats. We just haven't actually thought about changing hats when we're with our partner, right? Yeah. And so it's about knowing it. It's like I use the analogy, it's if you're ballroom dancing, right? One partner leads, the other follows, right? Because you can't have two leaders and you can't have two followers. And so you can change roles, but in that moment, one is leading and one is following. And so it's just, it can be actually quite beautiful to watch ballroom dancing. And the same goes for a relationship with masculine, feminine energy. So it really isn't about gender. It happens in same-sex couples as well. So it's just about what feels better to you, what turns you on. Where do you thrive? Do you thrive better in relationships when you're the feminine, or do you thrive better in a relationship when you're in the masculine?
Gotcha.
Sense? Does that make sense?
So let me ask you this. That makes sense. No, that makes sense. That analogy was great. No, that analogy was great. Let me ask you this. So, just as far as relationships with your personal, what was the hardest thing you had to learn and that you incorporate today?
Oh, wow. There's so many. There's so many.
You can name a few if you want.
Well, at different stages of my life, I learned different things, right? So as we talked about in my earlier years, I had to understand about the dynamics of attract and dysfunction and how we were wired by a family of origin, and that our brains are going to automatically go towards that or bring it towards us. So that was the biggest lesson for me then. And it took a while for me to get there. It's not like a switch you just turn on or off.
No, it's not.
Process, right? And then later in life, the masculine energy, feminine energy was the biggest lesson, because I remember clearly sitting at my computer, really getting that moment where it's like, oh, that's it, right? And I just sobbed for hours. I had totally shut down my feminine energy because I was a single mom, and I happened to be in a relationship that had ended not too long ago with a feminine energy man. And it just was like, on paper, it looked good, but we always felt like we were competing, and it just was like hitting each other, and it just didn't work. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I've shut my feminine down, and I'm in masculine mode most of the time. And that was huge for me, huge. And once I made shifts in that, I started attracting completely different men. Completely.
Was it like instantly, or was it like?
No, but it was like, oh my gosh, this is so yummy. I missed it all these years, you know? Ooh. Where have you been all my life? Right? You know, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah. So learning to allow my feminine energy to be there at certain times in my life, right?
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah. And I still turn my masculine on when I'm at work. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. How do you mentally like turn it on and off? Like as far as work, is this, I'm sure it's probably something that may come natural now, but in the beginning when trying to just figure this all out, like what did you do?
I used a lot of techniques around feeling and being and imagining, receiving, allowing men to open car doors for me and saying thank you and just feeling really good about it, right? Yes. And I can do it myself, right? Because I could, and he knows I can, right? But allowing him to do that for me and not having to do anything, it just say, oh, wow, that felt so good. Thank you. I love that when you opened the door for me. And so it was practice, a lot of practice. Men in grocery stores, open doors, it's practice. It's like anything else, right?
Yes, that's amazing. So did you literally like sit within yourself and just kind of think different scenarios out, and then eventually it just kind of played out in real life?
It did, and I have this visualization that I use for women that want to be in their feminine energy, right? It's like I just like picture a container, a beautiful vase or something, and it's full of love, right? And what color is love to you? Pink is my color of love, right? And it's glittery, right? It's just glistening. And I pour it over my head. See, as I'm talking about it, I get chills, right?
Yes.
And I just allow all that to just pour over me and just cover me in pink glitter, right? And I get goosebumps on my arms every time I do this, even now, years later. And it works really well. And so when I'm on a date with a guy, right, and I notice, I think maybe I need to like receive more here and just be in the moment and feel, I take the picture and pour it over me. And all of a sudden I notice he shifts.
That is amazing.
Quite amazing. It is quite amazing.
That is amazing, and I'm glad you're speaking about this on this podcast, because that is something I definitely agree with. Visualization, even sitting there, meditating. I know meditating helps me. Like if I'm feeling anxious or if I'm feeling any type of way, I believe in meditation and visualizing while I'm meditating too. And I've also have experienced the same things. And when you feel good about something and you continue and you really believe in this thought, it does make a shift. It comes miraculously into your life in some kind of way. So I'm a big believer in that. Mm-hmm. So dating, you just talked a little bit about dating. What tips would you give daters that are, out there dating and they just need just advice not to do the same things that they've done in the past or attract the same people that they've attracted in the past?
A lot of dating tips. Okay, well, we talked about masculine and feminine energy. So I think it's important if you're dating to really try to get with yourself and understand which energy you want to be most of the time in the relationship, right? And then dating is about relaxing and getting to know someone. And sometimes we go in with this like bull in the china cabinet kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel that it leaves a lot to be experienced by just listening to someone, right? And getting to know them slowly, gradually, and not feeling the pressure to hurry it up, right?
Right, because that's a lot.
Yeah.
Right. I know that's something I'm through in the past 2 hour rush. If it moves slow, I'm kind of like, okay, is he feeling me? Is he not feeling me? Like, what's going on? Like, that's how I used to think, but if it doesn't have to be like this deer in headlights kind of thing. And I know that's what I was used to too, like just fast pace. Let's go. And it doesn't have to always be that way.
No, it's not an end result here. And right. For the record, marriage is not an end result. It is the beginning of a journey, right? And so it's not an end result. And so with that said, how would dating be different if you're interested in knowing how you feel about him and you're not concerned about how he feels about you? Are you into him? And replaying the conversation. How did I feel when he said this? How did I feel when he looked at me? How did I feel when he touched me gently on the shoulder, right?
Right.
And so we get focused on the other person because we're wanting to avoid rejection.
Yeah, and yes, that is very true. That is very true.
You can go through date. Go ahead.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think that's why in the past I would get into do mode because rejection was just a no for me.
Right, so, we want to avoid it, right?
Right, by all means and all costs. That's why I said when I kind of got, because I'm used to being the one to be like, okay, well, I'm done with the situation. I'm tired of it. And when the guy broke it off with me, it was like, wait, what? You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
He was sensing your vibe.
He definitely was, and I have great appreciation for him now. I don't know if I will tell him that in person, but
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so if you look at it as a process, you go have coffee, tea, or drink, whatever, right? And you
Yeah.
make it short. You listen to what they have to say. You go home and you just sit with yourself. How did that feel? And guys do this sometimes better than women.
I
And
think so too.
so then all you have to do is decide, do I want to do it again? That's the biggest decision you have.
And not romanticize over the event. That's why making it short, I think, is important too, because I know a lot of women will sit and romanticize over an event too, or make it more than what it really was in the beginning. Would you agree with that too?
Absolutely. And so he didn't text, right? And then you just go into this whole thing, right? Okay,
Right.
well, first off, if he doesn't text, that's information. And if you don't allow it to trigger you, then you can say, oh, wow, he didn't text. That's interesting. And then wait and see what happens next. But we get
Right.
caught up in the end result that we're constantly trying to make up some kind of story in our mind about what that means that
Right.
he didn't text.
And I
You never
think
know.
I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, stop looking for an end result. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of enjoy it, enjoy the ride. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a good
Absolutely.
way to definitely look at it. And that's a way that we normally don't look at it. And I think it's because of what we've all kind of been taught. Like, marriage is the goal. Like, that's still being like pushed upon everybody from generation to generation to generation. Like, marriage is the ultimate goal, which, okay, that's cool, but sometimes when you rush for that goal, you end up in crazy situations like
Oh, you
what you
do most
mentioned
of the
before.
time,
Yeah.
right?
So
60
yeah,
something percent of people. Absolutely. We've got a lot of beliefs that society has given us that don't serve us very well, right?
right.
And so, yeah, and so don't rush it. Don't rush it and just allow it. And with women in particular, here's the thing. Don't date just one guy at a time. You start meeting other guys and talking to them. You have coffee with 3 or 4 guys a week. See if you like which ones you like the better than the other. They call you, they text you, wonderful. If they don't, you have
And
other options.
options. What advice would you give to a woman who, like, okay, me, even I still have this mind frame. I can't juggle 2 3 guys. Would the advice be to stop looking for the end result? Because I think that's what I've been doing. Like, I'm looking for the end result, so I'll focus on one guy at a time. What advice would you give to a woman who says, I can't juggle dating 2 3 4 guys at a time?
You'd be surprised. Okay, so do you meet more than 2 or 3 people a week in your life that aren't romantic endeavors? And
I
can
mean,
you
I
juggle
do
them?
through work. Yeah, I juggle a lot.
There
Yeah.
you go. Okay, so is it possible that it's a mindset that you can't do it?
I
And
definitely think it's a mindset. Again, it's what we've been conditioned to think. Like, it's not right for you to be doing this, that, and the third. But if nothing's established, again,
that's
that's kind of
exactly right.
romanticizing again. Like, you're romanticizing yeah. So yeah, if nothing's established, then it should be okay. So these are like roadblocks I know I have, and a lot of women have. They feel like it's a forbidden. You're not supposed to do it. Or if it's not forbidden, then it's, oh, well, I can't do that. But in
Well,
reality, like you said,
well, a lot of people think it's dishonest. How? How is it dishonest? You
true,
haven't committed to anything, right?
very
No,
true.
it's just coffee. It's just a first date, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
just a first date. But we're reading way too much into it. We can't handle more than one guy at a time. Is that true, right? Yeah, but so see, we're attaching to someone immediately, whether we know that they're worth being attached to or
True
not.
or
And
not.
you aren't
Right.
exclusive until you decide mutually to be exclusive. Now, whether
Very
that involves sex or not, that's entirely up to you. But if you're going to have sex outside of an exclusive relationship, be prepared that the other person may not feel the same way as you. So it's
right.
about making conscious choices and being clear on where your boundaries are and what you want.
Right. Right. Okay. So this is all the time we have today, but where can the listeners find you?
I have a Facebook page, Consciously Awake Counseling. I have a website, consciouslyawakecounseling.com. And I'm also on Twitter and Pinterest.
Okay, awesome. So all of that will be in the show notes as well. Lisa, I want to thank you again for coming on.
It's been a wonderful pleasure. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And I want to thank all of the listeners who tuned in today. If you have any questions, you can also email info@4kdating.com. And until next time, you guys have a great one.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. If you liked this podcast, please download and subscribe. If there's anything you would like to talk about in regards to relationships, or would like to be a guest on the show to speak on relationships or get advice, you can always connect via social media at Playing for Keeps or email DJ at info@4kdating.com. Thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.